Hello, I'm Bill LeMay, and thank you for watching Community Matters. We hope you'll continue to watch as we discuss issues facing our community and provide you with the resources and information needed to find solutions. Welcome to Community Matters. Today we're talking about opioid abuse, with prescription opioid addiction being one of the biggest drug problems today. Joining us is an expert on the issue, Dr. Reynolds Clodfelter, President and CEO of Southlight Healthcare. And welcome to the show, Doctor. It's a pleasure to have you.
Likewise, thanks for having me.
Opiates, I think of painkillers, but not all painkillers are created equal. What is an opiate today?
Well, we use the term more readily opioids because that includes all the naturally occurring opiates and the synthetics, so the ones that are made. But there are a plethora of them. They're the ones that we know from history, the opiates, things like opium and morphine, things that are more naturally occurring. And opioids are the synthetics, things that are made like Percocet and Darvon and more recently OxyContin and the oxycodones. And the ones that you were referencing are the prescription pain meds, and those started being a problem for us back in the 90s and have caused quite a spiral over the last 20 years. And more recently, that's evolved into heroin being a big problem because it's so much cheaper than the opioids, and because of some of our national and local legislation, the prescription pain meds are harder to come by for people, so they've turned to heroin as a readier and cheaper alternative.
You know, and that's just a fascinating statement that on one end, because of wanting to do better, there's this unintended consequence where people now find it more expensive and more difficult and then go into the illegal market in order to get pain medication. You mentioned 20 years. I mean, opiates and painkillers seems to have been around for a long time, and yet we're just recently hearing, it seems, about this epidemic. And you've had the president speak about it. You have the news really hitting on it. So what happened? What changed? Or has it always been this way?
It's a great question. Opioids have been with us since the dawn of history.
Yes.
And always used in different ways by different peoples and cultures over time. Best we can tell at a seemingly steady rate without huge spikes in here and there. We had a bit of a spike in the 60s with some of the drug culture, but it was fairly minimal. And from about the mid-late 60s to about the mid-late 90s, it was pretty darn flat, meaning opioid use was occurring in America like it was in other places, but at a fairly low and steady rate. Then something major happened in the mid-90s. In 1995, the American Pain Association coined pain as the fifth vital sign. So when you go into your doctor, you get your blood pressure taken and your pulse and your heart rate and all that sort of stuff. And the theory was, but we aren't assessing for pain. And that's real for people, and we need to be assessing it. You mentioned yourself about pain. And so the American Pain Association put this out, and within about 2 years' time, pretty much all the medical boards across the country had adopted that notion. Pain is the fifth vital sign. And the message was, it is real for people, our patients have it, we need to be checking for it, and we have good, non-addictive solutions to address it if people have pain. Well, the other four vital signs are very objective, they're numeric, they can be monitored and measured, and we know what they are. There are variations to that. There's a white coat syndrome that can cause blood pressure to spike and so on and so forth. But pain is very subjective, and your pain and my pain on a subjective scale are going to look very different. And people were asked, and they said, yes, I have pain, and it's a 6 or a 3 or a 10. And then there was behind that the American Pain Association and the pharmaceutical companies pushing, here are some great alternatives, safe, effective, non-addictive. And by about 1998 or so, 99, we had a ubiquitous amount of opioids, of prescription pain meds flooded into the marketplace in America. And that was the dawn of the current opioid epidemic.
I did not know that. And you're right. I was asked, just talking personally, because I have chronic pain, and they will ask me, is it a 5? Is it a 6? What is it? And that even changes for me, depending on if you reach new heights, right?
Right.
Let me ask you, how do you judge? Is there a way to judge an individual having the kind of pain that needs to be treated or not? There isn't, is there, really?
Well, just for point of clarification, I'm not a physician, I'm a psychologist. But I am an addiction specialist, and I work closely with physicians in the care of patients. But no, there really isn't. I mean, other than a lot of experience, which we have, and expertise, people's reports are subjective. And so you can ask questions to get a lot more specificity and see, you know, are we dealing with a pain issue here, or are we dealing with a potential addiction issue?
So what kind of numbers are we talking about? It sounds like we have millions of people. Is it that high? I mean, how many people are becoming addicted each year to opioids?
It's growing every year. It's continuing to increase. One of the most alarming numbers is about 164 people die every day of preventable deaths due to opioid overdose in America. About 4 in North Carolina every day. Again, preventable deaths, just simply overdose, unintentional, by and large unintentional, due to addiction. The numbers are staggering. The number of people addicted, yes, millions across the country, and it's about a $75 billion a year problem now relative to the cost to society.
How do people become addicted? Is there a high that they are attracted to by taking the drug? And maybe let's just focus on the prescription end at this point. Or is it because over time the drug is less effective and they take more? What is the attraction?
Yes, there is a high, to be sure. But let me explain a little bit about physiology in the brain. There are literally millions of opioid receptors in our body. So our body is ready for, and we produce some natural analgesics that are like that. So we are ready to receive opioids to address pain, physical pain and mental emotional pain. Many people get addicted, especially from the prescription meds, because they had a surgery or they had a nagging, aching problem, and they were given the pain med with good intention by their physician. And for a few people, they realized pretty quickly, this is something different. And it feels good, not only the high part, but also the other pieces, the way it kind of wipes away physical pain. And as I mentioned to you, mental, emotional pain, and some people even have kind of a euphoric state that's not just simply a high like you'd want to get to go party and have fun, but something that really makes the person feel good, and they would describe warm all over. And a lot of people are looking for that, particularly people with physical and or mental emotional pain. So we're naturally predisposed. More importantly even than that is the brain's reward circuitry. So our brains are built to when we have positive, pleasurable, reinforcing events, to repeat them over and over again, because the brain, that reward circuitry in the brain, which is below the cortex, so not the thinking part, not the new evolved part, but the old reptilian brain that reinforces behaviors like food or good food or sex or things like that, is the same circuitry on which substances of abuse work. So we are predisposed to, when that feels really good, for it to replicate itself. So the brain is hardwired towards towards addiction when it has that flood of those really good feelings. And for one more perspective on that, I heard a great speaker, Corey Waller, who's an MD, who's an addiction specialist, who'll actually be a speaker at our event later this year, a Southlight event, did a great analogy on that. He said, so a steady state, each of us wakes up each morning, and from a dopamine sort of level in our brain, we're at about a 50. Best day ever, best day you've ever had, about 100. First use, opioids, 1,000. And the brain is constantly seeking that kind of...
That would be human nature. You would want to do that.
You would want to do that.
When we come back, There's so much to talk about on this particular issue. About those, maybe we can break down the classifications. Is it grandma becoming addicted as much as maybe someone who's seeking street drugs? But then how do you tell the signs? And ultimately, what can we do about it? So we'll be back to talk more about this. You stay with us. Don't go anywhere.